This is the Correctional Institution for Women located in Mandaluyong, Philippines. Originally home to the 270 inmates that came from the Old Bilibid compound in 1931, that number ballooned exponentially to 2,000 since then. Unfortunately, we can't say the same about the facilities. This prison has seen almost a century of changes, but the women prisoners faced decades of pain and suffering, both mentally and physically. In this video, we're taking you through the harsh realities of the Correctional Institution for Women. Before it was called CIW, it was the Women's Prison. And before that, the women were crammed up with male inmates inside the Old Bilibid compound on Azcarraga St, Manila. It became a women's prison after the signing of Act No. 3579 in November of 1929, which authorized the transfer of all women inmates to the new facility. We'll talk about why that happened later in the video. Then, in 1982, when a fire blazed through CIW due to faulty wiring, it destroyed the main facility and they relocated to this new compound. This, technically, is the country's first and only penal institution dedicated to women offenders. The complex has three main camps based on security status. Minimum security camp is for inmates convicted of petty offenses. As of 2019, there were 18 PSDLs, or persons deprived of liberty. Medium security block for medium offenses, which has around 253 PSDLs. And maximum security camp, which is also the largest and holds all the felons, around 2,925 PSDLs. Now, you might think the fire was a good thing, considering the shift to a new building, but they ended up cramming them in more. For example, the dormitories with single beds had to be replaced with 2 bunk beds that could accommodate 4 people at a time. Common areas were converted into dormitories to give room to the growing population, which means there were no hallways and mess halls. That changed when in 2013 they welcomed a new building, but it only helped with the issue of congestion. It did not solve it. In 2013, President Benigno Aquino III signed the Republic Act 10575, which aimed to improve the facilities and the crazy 1 to 144 guard-to-inmate ratio in CIW. When the inmates arrive, they're brought to the receiving office, where they go through an inspection. Items like money will be taken and put in their prison record, and medicines will be given to a medical officer. They are later photographed, given a haircut, and issued prison uniforms and equipment. According to Bravo's report, the Reception and Diagnostics Center admits inmates and classifies them based on their security status, and they go through psychiatric, psychological, medical, and other examinations during the day. These 60 days also serve as the inmate's reformation, after which the inmate is allowed to mingle with other inmates. 5:30 a.m. is the wake-up, after which there's morning prayer. It's part of their rehabilitation program, and they're only given 10 minutes to shower. During their outdoor time, there are 5 roll calls, 1 thorough check per hour to make sure nobody escapes. Also during their time, all the inmates mingle, the felons and petty offenders. Considering the lack of guards, the only way to maintain control is to have strict rules in place. Although most of the convicts have hidden stories, the most popular convict here is Janet Limnapolis, the mastermind behind the Priority Development Assistance Fund, or PDAF, scam. The PDAF was a program made to allow legislators to fund small-scale infrastructure or community projects which were outside the scope of the National Infrastructure Program. But it was later ruled as unconstitutional. However, that did not stop Napolis from engaging in its alleged misuse, alongside other Philippine senators. In 2015, when she was detained in CIW, she had quarreled with the other inmates and a prison officer. Justice Secretary Leila de Lima asked the prison officers to look after her while they worked on the case. De Lima also said that, quote, she had an altercation with certain inmates and a CIW employee, so she was temporarily placed in the mother's ward. She'll be transferred to a new ward called Dormitory 8, which has a disciplinary cell. She was unsure whether Napolis had actually been sent to the Bartolina, which was the solitary confinement. The judge further ensured that, quote, there should not be a misinterpretation or misimpression that she's being given special treatment. As strictly as they implement these rules, there are still a few shortcomings. In 2020, the Bureau of Corrections made a surprise inspection in CIW and yielded cash from 2 Chinese prisoners, one of whom is convicted drug queen Yu Yuk Lai. The amount recovered from her was 90,000 Philippine pesos, around $1,650, and from the other inmate was around 150,000 Philippine pesos, around $2,750. By rule, prisoners are only allowed to keep cash of up to 2,000 Philippine pesos and only for personal expenses. This surprise inspection was part of the Philippine National Police's Oplan Galugad, which is done to flush out criminals and suspected members of terrorist groups. On top of the money, they also found some contraband like plastic sachets containing white crystalline substance, solar batteries, game gadgets, and broken pieces of jewelry. Seems like the CIW is not up to code on its needs. Otherwise, why would the inmate put in so much effort to bring such stuff inside the prison walls? So far, it seems like the women prisoners are being rehabilitated. But the incapabilities here make the rehab process almost worthless. According to the UN Human Rights Report, they highlighted these problems down to simple numbers. First, the women and children's desks. For those of you who don't know, the WCD was established in all police stations to ensure protection of the human rights of all PDLs. When the UNHCR conducted their study in 2015, they found that not all police officers and even WCD officers had undergone the necessary training on human rights and the handling and treatment of children in conflict with the law. And because of this negligence, there were no prenatal and postnatal services. Instead of having a proper medical facility, the police refer the cases to the nearest clinic or government hospitals. This falls short of what the standards and the Bangkok rules require. On top of that, they even lack basic healthcare options. During the COVID-19 pandemic, 18 inmates and 1 staff member tested positive, which is typical considering the overcrowding. So what did they do? They started to transfer the 18 inmates to the new Bill-lib-bid prison, which sparked outrage in Metro Manila. The mayor himself didn't even know about the transfer. Then, there's the lack of attendance of female police officers in stations. They can't hire male guards, so they end up appointing trustable jailers to govern some parts of the prison. Like when a prisoner enters their dorm, there's a prisoner appointed as dorm in charge, who in some cases can even punish prisoners. Then, there are the women and girls from rural communities who face heightened risks to gender-based violence and have even more trouble in accessing justice. Same is the case with migrant women, who in most cases don't even know the reason for arrest or understand the law. According to research done by Women's Education, Development, Productivity, and Research Organization, or WEDPRO, most of the women on death row came from poor families with markedly low educational attainment, and that the women, quote, had barely understood how the legal system works despite the legal counsel available to them. In 2016, thousands of drug arrests of men led to their partners also being detained. Take, for example, Catherine, which is not her real name, who was caught between fire when her husband, a suspected drug pusher, got arrested. She spent 4 years and 7 months in a provincial jail just outside Manila. But as soon as her husband got arrested, she was given a death sentence and then entered the CIW. Back then, she was one of only 32 women in the death row facilities. All these flaws inspired the book Invisible Realities, Forgotten Voices, published by WEDPRO about the women on death row. Looking at these cases, it is unwise to say that the prison is tailored to be this challenging. The purpose of rehabilitation was to instill the right lessons, not subject the inmates to further psychological traumas. The prison did secure a win last year by freeing 59 inmates on good behavior, but until the institution fixes the overcrowding issue for good, it may accidentally build up to a massive riot. What do you think can be done to fix the harsh realities of CIW Mandaluyong? Let us know in the comment section below. And as always, thanks for watching.